Welcome to the video demo series for Configure.IT. Unleash the hassle-free way to build bug-free mobile apps in the quickest possible. So in this video, we're going to discuss the picker control, and we're going to discuss it in context of a larger project that we'll be doing over a couple of videos. And that project is going to be getting location data from the Google Places API and displaying it in a table and also in a map view. And we're going to use the picker controls as our query parameters. So the first thing we want to do is come over to the control list, and we'll type in picker. And there's three pickers. There's the regular picker, there's a multi-data source picker, and there's a multiple selection picker. But before we start with the pickers, I went ahead and created two data sources, and you can see them over here. The first one is called Get Picker Info, and the second one is called Get Categories. And let's take a look at those APIs real quick. Both of these APIs are in the SQLite API configuration because I put all the data and all the APIs in the local database just to make it simpler. So this one right here is the Get Picker Info, and what it's going to return is it's going to return a list of cities and it's going to return a list of states. And we'll go ahead and execute those so you can see what the data looks like. So you can see that the first data array, Get Cities, just has a list of cities. And then the Get States just has a list of states. And now let's take a look at the Get Categories. So all this will do is just return a list of categories. Go ahead and execute that one. And you can see this is just a list of categories from Google. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the pickers themselves. Like I said, this is going to be part of a larger project. And part of the value of the Google Places API is you can actually request data several different ways. So the first way we're going to request data is by category. And we're going to use the multiple selection picker for that. And the reason we're using this picker is so that we can request multiple categories at the same time if we wish. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and set up the coordinates. So we're going to set it at 10. 45, we'll do a width of 300, and we'll leave the height as 44. The object ID, we'll go ahead and name it picker multiple selection. Okay. Now that we have that set up, we can come down here to key name to data. And again, this is going to be used for selecting our categories. So we're just going to scroll down to Get Categories, and we're just going to do category name. So the key to data source is used if your API has multiple queries in it or multiple arrays. The key to data source is where you select which array the key name to data is going to be coming from. Now the key to data index is used if you want to send a value besides the key name to data to an API. So for example, in this case, we have the category name as our key name to data, but if we wanted to send a category ID to be used in an API, then we would assign that value to the key to data index. Now the key name to data display is used to display data from a separate API. So for example, in this case on a picker, the values are loaded on the picker load, and that's the key name to data. Now, if we wanted a value to be pre-populated, for example, we did an API call and it pre-populated a category, then we would put that value into key name to data display, and that value would be called on the main view load instead of on the picker load. Now, if the key name to data and the key name to data display has the same name, for example, in this case, category underscore name, then we don't have to assign anything to the key name to data display. So we get a lot of questions on the data source file. This is designed to take a JSON file. However, it is not currently operational as of the recording of this video. Now, the picker selection receiver IDs. So this is really important. It's always a good idea to use this functionality, and what this does is it will insert the value of your picker into a label or a text field. And in this case of a multiple selection picker, it's actually a requirement. So what we want to do is go ahead and insert an additional label, and this label we want to go ahead and set it as the same height and coordinates as the picker itself. And the reason we want to do that is going to become very evident here in just a minute. So we'll just name this label multiple selection. We want to go ahead and take a look at the object tree. So you can see that our label is below our picker. But what we want to do is actually place it above our picker. And what this does is on our screen, it actually places the picker on top of our label, so that the selection of the picker will appear in the label, but because the picker itself is transparent, you'll be able to see the text, but when you actually touch it, you're actually touching the picker itself. So for the label, we're going to go ahead and change it to select category, and then what we'll do is we'll just come and we'll center that up. So one other thing we need to do is to go ahead and change the background color. So we'll just come up here and type in color. We'll see background color right there, and we're just going to go ahead and change it to white. And that's all we need to do for the label. Now going back to the picker, and we're just going to scroll down, and the picker selection receiver ID, we're going to select object, and we're going to select the label. And again, what that's going to do is the values that we select in the picker will actually be stored in the label itself. So this next one is should picker data source load after click. So if you wanted the picker data to load after the picker was chosen, then you would select this box here. But at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to leave that unchecked. Disable value sorting. So by default, the picker will sort your values. If you don't want it to sort the value and you want it to show the values as returned by the API, then just go ahead and select that box right there. In the multiple selection picker, you have the ability to enable a search box. So we'll go ahead and do that one right there, and we'll show you how that works. You can also do an enable all selection, but we'll go ahead and leave that off. Numerical bounds, we're going to come back to that in another picker in just a minute. And the select all options row title, so if you enable this one, this is what that title should be. So you could do all, you could do select all, or whatnot. If you have any indicator images for the multiple selection options, you would load those right here. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the parameters that are unique to the picker. And we'll just scroll down a little bit, and we'll come down to the toolbar customization. So the toolbar customization are the parameters that you can choose to change the look and the appearance of the toolbar itself. So for example, if you wanted to change the color of the toolbar, you would choose this one right here, and let's say we just do red. If you want to change the toolbar title color, let's do white. Now one thing to know on the toolbar title color, or the title itself, because we've enabled the search, we actually won't see the title. But we can put one in, and we'll do select category. The bar button tint color, so this is the color of the buttons on the title bar, and we'll do a green just to show how that looks. So now we have our multi-selection picker configured. The next thing we want to do, another query parameter that we're going to have, is to be able to search by city and state. And so the way we're going to do that is we're going to come over here to control list, and we're going to type in picker, and we're going to do that with a multi-data source picker. So what a multi-data source picker allows you to do is have multiple data sources in one control, so you can get a combination of values. What we're going to do is first is we're going to position it. We're going to do 10, we're going to do 110, we're going to do a width of 300 and 44, and then this one we're going to do picker multi-data. Okay. Now again, we want to do another label, so we'll pull over another label, and this one again, it's going to be 10. We're going to do the same size and coordinates, 300 and 44. We're going to do label. We're going to choose select city and state, and we're going to center that up. We're going to change the color, the background color, to white. And we're going to come back to our object tree and we're going to position that behind the picker. And the label, we're going to do label MultiData. Now we want to come back to our picker. And as you can see, this picker has a white background. So we want to go ahead and remove that white background. So we'll type in color, background, and we're just going to choose none. Now we need to go ahead and assign the data to this picker. And the way we're going to get the data is through this get picker info. Now you're probably wondering, how do you assign multiple data sources to one picker? So if you remember, in our data source we actually had two different arrays. We had the get states and the get cities. So the way you get multiple keys to the data source is you come down here and you type in other, and you're going to type in the keys get cities, comma, get underscore states. Now it's really important. I see a lot of mistakes that after that comma they put a space. So don't put a space. It's just get cities, comma, get states. And then for the data you're going to do other, and you're going to do city underscore name and state underscore name. And the way you get all this information is go back and take a look at the API. And if we go back and we take a look at it, you can see get cities and the city name and then get states. So again, this is the key. So get city and get cities and get states, and then the city name and then the state name. So if we just go back and take a look at that, get cities, get states, and city name and state name. So now we just scroll down, picker selection receiver ID. We're going to select that, and we're going to do label MultiData. So now the last thing that we can do in the Google Places API is actually search by distance from our current location. And the way we're going to set the distance is by just a regular picker. So let's go back to our control list. We'll type in picker, and we're just going to do a normal picker view this time. So we want to go ahead and set the coordinates, and we're going to do that with 10. The Y will be 170. Then the width will be 300 again, and the height will be 44. So now we also want to go ahead and do a label. So we'll pull over a label. So now we'll go ahead and set the size and the position. So it will be 10, 170, 300, 44, and we're going to do the label, and we're just going to call it picker. For the text, we're just going to go ahead and select distance in meters, because that is what the requirement for the API is. We'll center that. Oh, and I've got a misspelled word. And now we can go back to our object tree, click on picker view. So all of this right here, we're not going to use it all because we're actually going to use just numbers. So if we come down here, picker numerical bound string is what we're going to use. And basically what this does is this allows you to select the range of the values that you can choose from your picker. So the API goes up to 50,000 meters. So we're going to actually go from 0 to 50,000. So the step values are how much each selection will increase. So if you did it by 1, you would literally go from 1, 2, 3, 4. If you did it by 2s, it would count by 2. But in this case, we're going to do it in 1,000-meter increments. So we'll have 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, so forth and so on. Picker first option title. So this is used so if you want something displayed at the top, then you would type that in here. So in this case, we're going to put in please select distance. Okay, and now we have our third and final picker configured. Before we go on, there's one last thing that we have to do for the first two pickers, and that is load the data. So on the first picker where we're loading up the categories, we have to call that API, and the way we do that is on actions, and we have the option to do on load or on click. But on this one, we're going to do on load. So when this control is loaded, it's going to call an API. And the way we do that is we'll come over here and type in API. We'll do a local API because remember the APIs are local and the data is local. And we're going to do the get categories. We'll click save. Now the other option is the click, and we're going to do that on the second picker. Now we're going to go up to actions. We're going to click on click. Select actions. We're going to type in API, local, and we're going to do get picker info. Click save. Now the last option here is picker done. So when someone selects a value and clicks done, any action you want performed at that point would be put in right here. So this picker done is what that's for. Now because we want this to load on click, then we have to come over here to the properties and have one more configuration done, and that is should picker data source load after click. We want to go ahead and select that. So there's a couple more things we have to do before we take a look at it in the app, and that is the picker view. We want to go ahead and place it below the label picker. So we'll click on label picker and we'll move it up. And as you can see, the background of the picker view is covering up our label. So we want to go ahead and remove the background. And we'll click on background color, none, okay. And now we want to go to the label picker and add the background. And we'll go to background color, and we'll choose white. So the next thing we want to do is select the receiver ID. So we'll click select object, and we're going to choose label picker and click save. So now that we have everything configured correctly, why don't we go ahead and take a look at it in the app. Okay, so I've downloaded the project, and let's take a look at see how this works. So the first one, we'll select category. And as you can see, the pop-up has given us multiple options with the ability to select multiple items. So we can choose accounting and airport. And as you can see at the top, they're all separated by a comma. So we can choose as many as we want. We can also search. If we type clothing, we can add clothing. And once we're done, we can click done. So as you can see, everything's in the field separated by a comma. Now the next thing is maybe we need to select a city and state. So we're going to choose Atlanta, and Atlanta's in Georgia, so we'll go ahead and select done. And then distance, we'll go ahead and select 14,000 meters, select done. And that's how you use the picker controls. Watch for a future video where we can take this data and use it in a Google Places API and display the results in a table and in a map view. Want to learn more? Visit our Help Center for additional tutorials, our Support Center, and our online community, where our support team will assist you. Keep configuring.